Hello, welcome to IGN. I'm Daniel, this is Alex, and we've been reading this, which is The Art of Titanfall from Titan Publishing. Do you see what they did there, Alex?
I do.
It's very clever.
Yeah.
Now, this is a really cool art book. It shows you lots of stuff about Titanfall, but early in the week you might have seen that somebody delved into the hex code of the beta. I have no idea what that means. And they found loads of stuff about extra modes, weapons, and maps. Now, it's all in here. Well, a lot of it is. So why don't we share that with you?
Let's take a look.
Yeah. So the first thing we're going to look at is creatures. Now this is really exciting because we haven't seen anything on these at all yet in Titanfall. We're going to look at the maps that were uncovered in more detail, and that shows you where some of these creatures are from. But here are a look at them. What were your first thoughts, Alex?
So these are kind of giant Leviathan creatures that we'll talk a little bit more about later on. But I don't really know how it's going to work. But I'm, again, speculating. Like, are we actually going to see some of these in the maps, or is it just kind of background noise?
So
I don't know.
Look at this guy. He's like a flying kind of wasp-like creature, more kind of primate. Again, more kind of a dog-like, kind of, look at that, it's kind of a zebra. You see the evolution of the creature design.
Almost an avatar.
Yeah, so what I'm wondering whether these suits were used by human colonizers to settle faraway planets to provide protection while they were kind of chopping down trees, stuff like that, building refineries, using it as an exoskeleton. But we'll get onto that a bit later. Should we look at tech first?
Let's take a look at some of the weapons that, again, were spoken about, or at least leaked in this in the NeoGAF story earlier this week. So first up, we've got this arc cannon, which basically fires an electricity bolt, which is great at kind of short range, according to the leak. But again, we see it here. Haven't seen it in the beta, so I think that's going to be something that's quite interesting to kind of play around with. Does tons of damage, but as I say, you've got to get up close and personal to use it. Next up is the Railgun. Now the Railgun is, again, another add-on that goes onto a Titan, and that deals massive damage, amazing range, great accuracy, but you've got to be pinpoint accurate with it. It's very, very easy to miss your target. And then lastly, the Avenger, which is a chain gun. Now, that wasn't leaked in the NeoGAF story earlier this week, but I'm just wondering if it's another name for the chain gun that we've seen in the beta already. Yeah,
there's loads of stuff in this book. It shows you the evolution of the weaponry over time, but actually there's a lot more vehicle stuff. Now, when you play a game of Titanfall, you kind of get dropped in the map from a dropship. It's actually a little bit reminiscent of Aliens, I think. Yeah. James Cameron. There's kind of that vibe going on in Titanfall, I think. But look at this. There's an IMC bomber.
Yeah, again, don't know if this is going to just be in the background in some of the maps, or whether they might be perks or something like that.
Is it the people who made Titanfall made Call of Duty. One of the things that Call of Duty is incredibly famous for is kill streaks, introducing them. Yeah. Now, burn cards seem to be the new innovation for Titanfall. Is this an ultimate burn card that you call in a bomber for, just to raise the battlefield in your favour?
Yeah, we've seen bombers, we've seen guerrilla tanks, we've seen drones, all in this book. So again, be really interested to see how they materialise in the game itself.
Shall we move on to the most interesting part, I think?
Let's move on to the levels themselves. Now, I think a total of 15 were revealed. Obviously, we already know about 2 of those from the beta, but the first one up is this Outpost 207, which, according to the book itself, I'm just going to read you a quick extract, says, militia leader McCallan is especially keen to make an assault when IMC's capital ship, IMS Sentinel, pulls in for repair, although no outpost protective facility has ever been breached before. It's an audacious plan to use a derelict ship as bait, but IMC forces are unlikely to be fooled quite so easily. So I wonder if this is part of the story or the campaign multiplayer that Respawn has spoken about.
Yeah, so going through the art book, a lot of the kind of concept art for levels is accompanied by one of these anecdotes. Yeah. And we're not sure whether they're anecdotes just to flesh out the world, to give you a rationale for why it looks like that, or it's kind of setting up a scenario that you'll play there. So that's the moment that you'll relive, as it were, when you play Titanfall. So this is Outpost 207. You can't really get much sense of it. The Outpost is on this planet. Apparently they're strewn throughout the universe to act as bases. So this is 207. There's hundreds of them.
Yeah, exactly. And they're scattered throughout, and again, get some idea of what they look like inside. Again, a lot of this stuff really feels like Avatar to me. Yeah. In terms of the way it's kind of set up now.
So this is Fracture we know about. We're going to move past Fracture. That's in the beta. Let's move on to the next one.
So the next one is called Colony. Now, this, I guess it's a bit like a kind of shanty town, but so this was originally set up, inhabitants of this place were from a ship called the IMS Odyssey, who went AWOL after becoming disillusioned with the IMC and their peacekeeping ways. This is what it says in the book. I'm not making this up, honest. And so what you can actually see is the carcass of that Odyssey is still visible on the cliffs overhanging the city. But what you also see is that it's become very much a kind of self-sufficient in place. And here you see solar panels. You see it a lot more on this kind of page here. Like a lot of the prefabricated buildings that were dropped off have been kitted out with solar panels, so it's a lot more kind of self-sufficient. Exactly.
It's a little bit kind of favela, isn't it? Like Brazil, I think that's what they've kind of been riffing off with Colony.
Yeah.
But in these shots, I think you can get some sense of how it'll play as a map.
Yeah.
Okay, the next one is Demeter. Now, Demeter is the Greek goddess of the harvest, and from the location, it is kind of a mining operation, harvesting a planet's natural resources to provide infrastructure and material for the various companies and factions within Titanfall. This wasn't in the NeoGAF leak, so I don't know whether it's maybe just the location that's in the game important for the Titanfall mythology, or whether it's a playable map. A lot of this doesn't seem to easily lend itself. It looks quite dense. I can't imagine the Titans running around there. But
well, according to the lore that's spoken about in the book itself, this is actually an IMC stronghold that serves as a refueling point for long-distance jumps, and should it go down to the militia, that it will suddenly stop them from being able to kind of zip across the galaxy quickly. So
and
again,
a lot of...
don't know if that's going to come back to the story in the game itself.
Okay, should we get to the next one?
Yes.
This is probably the most interesting one, I think.
So Boneyard is, well, obviously we mentioned the Leviathans earlier. Now, actually, a giant Leviathan carcass provides the backbone, for much of this level. And you can see these giant, almost like elephant-like beasts, which are obviously dead here.
So this is kind of a settlement that's gone wrong. They tried to settle on this planet. The indigenous wildlife fought back. And it says that the planet population is down to scarcely 100,000. From what used to be. A lot of the cities seemed kind of decayed. It looks a little bit like Tatooine in places. It's kind of been destroyed. Now, look at this. I think this is one of the most impressive. You can imagine that being a Titanfall map. It's kind of got that scale, but kind of got that intricacy for pilots as well. And you've got this kind of man-made structure, almost using the ribcage as a natural kind of support. I think that's an awesome image.
You turn the page here, and then we get the glimpse of what one of the Leviathans looks like. It's absolutely huge. You've got a mountain here. These in the game are absolutely vast, and it's just dwarfing everything around.
When I saw this image for the first time, it immediately reminded me of Frank Darabont's The Mist. Right at the end of the movie, they're driving along, and one of these creatures walks along. It's almost identical to that. And who knows? I imagine something like that's going to be in the background of a multiplayer game, but some of the wildlife like this, I think they'll probably get involved at some point.
Well, actually on the next page you can see the legs of one of the Leviathans in the background of the fight, so I'd love to kind of see how that's going to play.
And there's this little tidbit here if you want to go through that, Al.
So there's a piece of technology that they talk about a couple of times called the dog whistle, which is an ultrasonic emitter that basically keeps the local wildlife at bay.
Like those little things that you use to stop your cats pissing on your lawn.
I've never used one of those, but yeah. But the idea, again, is that these could potentially become vulnerable or focus points for the militia. Because, what happens if you take out one of these dog whistles, does it then mean that the local wildlife can then get in and that's another threat? I can see that totally working.
That could almost be a kind of conceit within a single level.
Next up is, according to a map called Corporate. Don't really know that much about this, apart from it is the headquarters for Hammond, which is the robotics company that we've seen a few bits and pieces
so
about.
It creates the Titans, am I right? I don't know whether that's possibly some kind of John Hammond reference from Jurassic Park.
Definitely.
A kind of Promethean technologist who uses science beyond his reach, and it kind of turns against him. But, again, speculating wildly.
But again, apart from these handful of images here, don't really know that much about Corporate as a map. So next up is Overlook. Again, not much information here, apart from it's kind of part lagoon, part kind of facility, but it's essentially a prison base in the middle of nowhere where the IMC hold the militia. So again, could that be something where we see and try and break out your brethren if you're part of the militia?
It's not a Shining reference. Nexus is the next one.
Nexus. So
I don't know. This isn't. It's probably the least distinct of the maps in here. I think it's
Yeah.
kind of this war-torn area.
So set on a planet called Harmony, not the sex shop on Oxford Street,
which was a quiet agricultural trading town.
Yeah.
Okay.
But so originally, according to Respawn, there was going to be a huge space elevator, which I think if you turn the page, you can see it. Sorry, next page. A giant space elevator here that it will ferry cargo from the planet's surface up into the atmosphere. But according to Respawn, they took that out because it just didn't really fit in with the way that the map worked. So again, not sure how it's going to play out, but that kind of stuff I think really adds colour to the game itself.
Yep. Next up is Airbase.
Now, Airbase
is set on a distant moon of Demeter.
That's right. Again, lots of kind of talk about dog whistle defences here. Like, it looks like the IMC basically invaded this planet, dropped down an airbase to give them a platform to attack the militia.
Kind of a tactical advantage.
Absolutely. But what you will see here is that obviously tons and tons of kind of drop ships, other kind of airborne platforms. But one of the things that one of the designers from Respawn says in the text is that this actually gives a lot more verticality for Titans, because in the maps that we've played so far, they're very much ground-based. But once you get inside the airbase itself, there's lots of platforms that if you take the time to get to the top as a Titan, you get the kind of tactical advantage
so
from
maybe
the
like
top of
lifts
the hill.
and stuff that they would use to transport aircraft up and down.
Exactly.
Right, got you. That's probably one of those lifts that you're talking about, those platforms.
Yeah.
So there you go, again, sense of scale at the airbase. Now, to the next map. Lagoon.
So this is kind of, I guess, a paradise completely destroyed by this giant, I think, what do they call it? They call it an IMC mega carrier, which is basically a giant...
It means it's big.
Yes, really, really big. But it's literally crash-landed, drop-shipped right in the middle of this gorgeous planet, crushing everything underneath. And again, don't really know that much about it, but what they do talk about is obviously lots of shacks, lots of huts.
A lot of water, which we haven't seen really yet prominently in a Titanfall level.
Yeah, but the other thing that it talks about is that kind of lots of overhangs, lots of kind of platforms for wall running to become a kind of major part of this. It feels like this is a level that's designed for pilots, whereas the last one perhaps was a level designed for Titans. So lots of kind of different things coming into play.
So there are big monsters in Titanfall. Who'd have thought it?
Yes.
But that's what we've learned from reading The Art of Titanfall, which is out in all good bookshops and some rubbish ones as well on the 25th of February. For everything on Titanfall, stay right here on IGN.